What is going on, everybody? Paul here, coming at you with your crypto coffee update, and man, do we have an episode for you today. Let's go ahead and kick off our wonderful series where we start the day by discussing the news and all the upcoming events in the big old world of crypto, all of course while enjoying our fresh cup of coffee together. So grab a cup, simultaneous sip with me. We're gonna need it today, folks. We have some very interesting information to cover. Like I said, at Cryptide, really the only thing you ever have to pay is attention, and realistically, I've been setting a proverbial chessboard for us for today. Literally, I've been prepping us for this day specifically, and as things progress moving forward, I believe things are going to speed up even more. So if you've been paying attention, this will mean a lot, and if you're new and just now joining us, or missed some episodes, that's no worries. This information will make complete sense on its own, and even more sense in context of previous Crypto Coffee updates. So let's get into it. A new report blames Tether for Bitcoin's bull run. This is something that we've covered before, but let's go ahead and get into how this new report is shining some light on some very interesting elements of cryptocurrency that are more gut-wrenching and confusing than anything. But first, let's set the stage. Is Bitcoin really untethered? Runs the title of a provocative new research paper published today. And you can see Bitfinex, that user, is mentioned. The gentleman who has been calling out Tether and Bitfinex for a better part of a year now, much to the chagrin of the bull run Lambo moon boys we saw in late 2017. Well, it turns out that fundamental analysis and statistical analysis of volume has a little bit more weight than Malambo and Mamoon, and Bitfinex is being vindicated heavily right now. This even flies in the face of a previous study that found little correlation between Tether and BTC, but look at the last sentence. The author of that report conceded, however, that only a complete audit of Tether would settle the matter once and for all. Oh man, you and me both, buddy, I wish, because this is something that I've been following since January, and I really wanted to see what was going to come out of this audit. Well, I guess Tether and Bitfinex, since they're owned by the same people, turns out, really don't want me to know what's in that audit, because they severed ties with the auditor before they could complete their task, leaving the accounts shrouded in mystery. Notice the date of this article, January 30th, 2018. And, like I said, we've been covering this very heavily. Look, Cryptide, published on February 7th, only 57 views. Oof. Well, you know, for those of you who have seen it, you'll know that we've been on this for a while and we've been setting the stage for exactly this. Massive market manipulation is afoot and we are beginning to see the pieces move. Important question. How are these pieces moved? After all, we're talking about hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of digital assets. Well, Bitfinex has been revealed to have a new Polish bank account under a Panama registered company. Notice the date, November 22nd, 2017. Interesting. Poland is an important player in cryptocurrency money laundering, not saying that they're complicit in it. After all, the Polish authorities froze this account and all 300 million euros that were in it. Stranger still, you could see that this was held by a shell corporation, Crypto SPZOO, which stands for Limited Liability Company, and CEX, another exchange, was on the ownership name as well. So Bitfinex and CEX, two assumingly completely unrelated exchanges, perhaps are not so unrelated after all. Now, what do I mean by Poland is an important player in this whole crypto money laundering thing? Well, you can see on the next slide, Mt. Gox also had a Polish bank. Although they use a much bigger bank nonetheless, it seems that geographical territory has some favorable properties in terms of shell corporations, as does Panama. Interesting stuff. Now, this is where things get extremely interesting and, like I said earlier, maybe even a bit gut-wrenching. Where does this money go? If Tether isn't backed by anything, and they have all this cryptocurrency flowing in, being traded for their coins, they're making a lot of money off of people who don't know that they are just buying a unbacked asset with no underlying value. Tether is literally, in that way, pretty much just a Ponzi pyramid kind of scheme that's going to become imploding in on itself sooner rather than later. But why? Who built it? Where did it come from? We've seen stablecoins before, perhaps the oldest of which is BitShares, built by Dan Larimer. But now we're kind of wondering, well, why did Tether get so large? Why is it the big daddy of all stablecoins? Well, to understand that, we need to know where Tether comes from. And for that, we're going to need to turn back the dial and go back in time a little bit to Realcoin. Spoiler alert, but Realcoin does become Tether, and we'll get to that, but not before we examine the founder, Brock Pierce. This may be very uncomfortable for some individuals. So just a disclaimer, if you're very empathetic, if you have a really soft heart, or if you've experienced any kind of trauma specifically in childhood, I'd advise to take this kind of content sensitively. Brock Pierce is the founder of the dollar-backed cryptocurrency Realcoin. Well, like I said, I spoiled it. It becomes Tether, and it's not so dollar-backed, but who is this guy? Notice, back in 2014, in May, some in Bitcoin group resign over new board members' link to sex abuse. Brock Pierce is haunted by accusations dating back to 1999, as he says they're not true. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt, okay? I'm going to do my absolute best to give Brock Pierce the benefit of the doubt in this and stack up the evidence, and you make the judgment call for yourself, but I'll let you know in advance. What I found is disturbing. Okay, 15 years ago, Pierce co-founded a Southern California startup called DEN, or DEN. DEN's been complicit in some weird stuff, but let's go ahead and skip down. You can see not long before the company was going to go public in 1999, Pierce and 2 other founders were named in a lawsuit about sexual abuse of underage boys. And Pierce was never charged criminally. Now, that phrasing is really important. We'll see why in a second. Below that, you see Mark Collins Rector, one of the co-founders. He's now a convicted sex offender, pleading guilty to raping children. So that's disgusting, deplorable, and the single worst kind of human being you could possibly have on this planet. And what's even more ridiculous, like I said, we're going to try to give Brock the benefit of the doubt, but at this point, we at least know he associates very closely with convicted pedophiles. It's not stacking up good. You see, lawsuits continue. After the settlement, Colin Rector, Shackley, and Pierce fled to Spain as a second set of victims filed another lawsuit in California against the 3 alleging sexual abuse. The 3 men never responded to this case, and a judge awarded the default judgment and a $4.5 million settlement in damages. This is the part that really gets me. I'm going to ask you guys a hypothetical. Let's say, and I pray that every single person who's hearing this just finds this as disgusting as I do. Imagine if you had those charges levied against you, and you knew you were innocent, because that kind of thing is so repulsive, it disgusts you to your core. Would you flee to a foreign country? Does that sound like the sane thing to do if you're innocent? And this is still going on. This is still happening. This isn't just 1999. Look here, 2006, 2014, more allegations of sexual abuse of children being levied against Brock Pierce, as late as 2014. And thank God they were arrested. Spain arrests fugitives in molestation case. Mark Collins Rector fled the U.S. in 2000 among charges of abusing young employees. Not even just young boys, but his employees. Disgusting. And here he is, Brock Pierce, dead center in orange. He was a minor at the time. He's 17 years old and was paid a $250,000 salary by his company. Strange stuff. And like I said, I spoiled it. Realcoin rebrands as Tether to avoid association with altcoins. But really at this point, after that little escapade, I wouldn't touch Tether with a 10-foot pole just because of who associates with it. I mean, like I said, even if we give Brock Pierce every piece of benefit of the doubt, what we end up with is Brock Pierce, who is friends with and associates with convicted pedophiles, who himself was a child star, think Harvey Weinstein, fled to Spain after being accused of raping children. That's fact. All of that is fact. Extrapolate from that what you will, but this is all on record. And I mentioned one other thing. I mentioned the original stablecoin, BitShares. Well, you know what's even stranger? You can see here, EOS and block.one officially end the relationship with Brock Pierce. This is after John Oliver on national television mentioned some of these really strange connections, perhaps as a psychological prep for the fact that this isn't going away, and God, whoever's funding Brock Pierce, whoever's associating with them, some strange stuff going on. But guess who runs EOS? Dan Larimer. Why is Dan Larimer associating with Brock Pierce? Because of his history in stablecoins? Does Dan Larimer not know about Brock Pierce's disgusting history? Or is there something else going on? I'm left with more questions than answers, as perhaps you are as well, but now we know a bit more about Tether, Bitfinex, and Brock Pierce. Now we know Brock Pierce founded Tether. We know he founded what became Tether. How does Brock Pierce relate to Bitfinex and that offshore Polish bank account? Strange, strange things. If anyone knows any definitive answers to this, please share below in the comments or send me a private message, because we're breaking ground on some very interesting things. Like I said, I set the stage for this and much, much more. Things look like they're about to start moving pretty quickly. But this has been an unusually long news bite. Like I said, it's a very important episode, perhaps the most important I've ever done. In my opinion, definitely the most important news bite and crypto coffee update I've ever produced. I hope it was beneficial for you. Let's go ahead and get into what's happening. Just some small stuff here. June 15th, Friday, Cryptolina is in Raleigh, North Carolina. Philadelphia Blockchain Bash is in Philly. Blockchain Econ Forums in San Fran. And Aeon's having an AMA. For Saturday, June 16th, there's going to be a People First conference in Berlin. And that's pretty much it for Saturday and Sunday. Couldn't find too much going on. That's all we have for today. As usual, all the links below in the description, along with a big old list of B-list tokens. They're fine projects. There's just far too much to talk about in respect to time, and I would rather cover the really critical news rather than lower tier coins, just because really it's the news that's going to affect the market more so than these coins, especially with the gravity of what we just talked about. But I hope you found it useful. Thanks so much for listening. Your support really does mean the world. If you found this kind of information useful, please spread it like wildfire. This is the kind of stuff that I think everybody needs to know in crypto, because after all, these are major projects that have major implication, and the federal government's starting to look at what's appearing to be massive market manipulation on a global scale. So, with that said, I'm Paul, signing off. Thanks so much for watching, and remember guys, all you gotta pay is attention. So I'll talk to y'all next time. Oh, and remember, the tide is rising, always.